back to Your Normal. This is the Your Normal podcast, and I'm your host, Blake Russell. And today is an exciting episode for me and the podcast in general. I was just talking to our guest about when I started this thing, I had a vision of it reaching people that I didn't know prior to starting. And that is what is happening today. I officially met this person 20 minutes ago, probably. But we've been emailing back and forth for about a month, I'd say, a month and a half. And I'm really excited about this because I feel like this particular interview is going to be interesting in the fact that it's the epitome of like why I wanted to start this. Like there's a lot of things about this person that like doesn't fit into a box because I don't think people should fit into boxes. And I think that she has a lot of interesting things to say and to talk about. And I'm going to go ahead and just stop talking now. I'm going to introduce Issy Abbott Death Row. Introduce yourself.
Hello. Hi. So yeah, I'm Issy Abbott Death Row. I am 22 years old. I am currently a senior at Southern Illinois University in Edwardsville. I am an English major and an art history minor. And hopefully in the next year, I will get my master's in museum studies.
In museum studies?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what's the, I mean, what would you do with that? Do you have thoughts?
I would love to work in like an art museum field, especially with like doing research. I'm particularly interested in 19th to about post-World War II European art in England and France.
Mm-hmm. Is that, so I'm going to just dive right in because I know information that the people that are listening don't know. So like, is your particular interest with that, like, would you say it's is it a combination of like your family's history with art and like being more from an artist background? Is it from like where your family's actually from? Like, what would you say your interest is, how you've derived that particular interest?
It's definitely a mix of my family roots, and I just grew up with a lot of that art around the house. Like my family photo albums, their cover is of that particular like Pear soap art style. And that's something I've always been drawn to because it's always been around in my house. So
yeah,
that's part of the reason why. And then also my great-grandfather, William Slow, he apprenticed underneath John Aldridge and I think Edward Bawden in the 1940s and 1950s. He did watercolor art underneath them. And my great-grandmother was actually John Aldridge's housekeeper for years. That's
really, I feel like, so tell me, John Aldridge is can you tell me more about who that person? I'm not familiar.
He was very prominent in the Essex, England area, which is where my mom's side of the family is from. He was known for like etchings and drawings and paintings. And yeah, what's really funny though is there was some controversy on Facebook recently because John Aldridge art page posted a drawing of a old lady, and they mistakenly titled it as my great-grandmother. And my grandma and her brother commented on this, and they were like, I don't know who this is, but that's not my mom.
Shit.
And they were just talking back and forth, and the person who ran the page was like, oh, but somebody who's professional titled it as Kathleen Slow. And my grandma and her brother were like, no, that's total bullshit.
Yeah, we're gonna set the record straight right now. Like,
yeah, I mean, it looked nothing like her, like at all.
I wonder how that happened. Like, I wonder how that like false information. Yeah, it's weird.
It's bizarre.
Yeah, it's like the whole world's this big telephone game now, and it's
right.
And nothing has to get like fact checked and
basically.
Okay, so I, like all our guests, Issy, I sent you a little homework assignment where I wanted you to come up with 5 words, and I want to kind of go into those now, and then we're going to get into other topics later. This first word, I was joking with Issy before we started this. I literally had to Google what it meant because I had So the first word is esoteric. I want you to first just give your definition of it and then tell me how it applies to you.
I view esoteric as being interested in things that people aren't really, in tune about. Just stuff that's so like bizarre, basically. Like I have a wide range of interests, such as I know like a lot about like 1960s music, such as the Beach Boys, particularly Brian Wilson, because when I was a little kid, my dad was a stay-at-home dad while my mom worked, and I would just watch music documentaries with him, pretty much from infancy until I went to preschool. And one documentary I was really into was one about Brian Wilson, and I would recite particular scenes from this documentary. But my favorite one was when they talked about his acid trips while recording music. And when I got to my first preschool was a Catholic preschool, and I was a quiet kid except for when I wanted to talk about what I wanted to talk about, and I wanted to talk about Brian Wilson on acid to my Catholic school teachers.
How old were you? You were in preschool?
I was 3. I was 3 when this happened.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so they had a conference with my parents and they thought that I had autism, but I don't. I got checked out, but ironically, I now have a little brother who has severe autism. So yeah, but along with that, I'm really into like the London post-punk scene going on right now. I enjoy like 90s SNL. I was told by a friend once that I'm probably the only person under the age of 30 who gives a shit about Chris Farley.
Dude, Chris Farley's the shit though. Like,
yeah,
he's like, it's so tragic he died so early. Like,
exactly.
He would have been the GOAT, I feel like. Yeah.
And then the other thing too, that's what I feel is esoteric is, it's all deals with my upbringing, because another thing that would calm me down when I was a kid was my dad would play this DVD of all of Blur's music videos from like their greatest singles. So, when my first trip to England to go see my family, my little cousin would watch, Pingu or Wallace and Gromit to calm down. And then I would just watch Blur's music videos. So, I mean, it's just stuff like that I feel, makes me kind of esoteric in a way. And yeah.
I have a couple thoughts in response to what you just said. Like, one, like your interest in the things that you're talking about being interested in, like it reminds me of growing up being my brother's brother, because my brother is very similar in that way. And even today, like he'll send me music and or he'll send me he'll be like, hey, you need to watch this on Netflix, and I'll watch it, and I'll be like, you have to go through like a back door in Netflix to get to it. And it's just like this really I'm now learning esoteric kind of bizarre is a good word to describe it. And it's usually like there's usually something redeeming within it, but it's like I'm just like always wowed at like how he came to like find certain things. And it seems like you have a similar quality. Like are you drawn to finding things that are like not known by many people, or like that's just not very mainstream? Is that something that you find yourself drawn to?
I think so. Yeah, definitely. I mean, even I know witchcraft is being like, like this big craze right now on TikTok and stuff, but I'm not on TikTok. But I've always had a draw to this, and it wasn't until the end of the pandemic when I got broken up with, and I had like this, it was such an intense period from late November, early December, because I was moving out of a very unsuccessful apartment move. And then, after I moved back home, I got broken up with. And I just, like witchcraft and tarot was something that I had always admired from afar, basically. But I never felt like I could dive into that. But as soon as I did, my life has changed so much for the better.
When did you do that?
I started doing that around December, I think, because I realized how much external validation impacted me. And I realized, if I don't have anyone else to turn towards to, I have to turn inwards to myself, because I'm the only person who can pick myself back up after such, a shitty situation. And I just did a lot of shadow work and realizing, my karmic patterns over the past few years. And and then I picked up my first tarot deck, and it just become part of my daily routine ever since.
I have questions because this is something I'm entirely unfamiliar with, but like the concept of like external invalidation or validation and the things that you're speaking to, I'm very familiar with, but it's like you manifested it within this particular interest. So can you like help me and people listening bridge the gap between like you recognizing these previous themes in your life and then you like specifically honing in on this particular concept?
So up until literally the end of last year, I was not really the best at upholding boundaries, and I did a lot of stuff out of obligation for other people. And I was definitely very much a people pleaser. And I thought that, my way of satisfaction would be, helping people out and, recognizing my self-worth through how people perceive me, basically. So yeah, I just got sick of it. Basically, I got sick of, trying to see my worth in other people when I should see my worth within myself. And tarot is a very introspective process. Hang on one second. I need water real quick. All right, I'm back.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm fine. I had like this really weird dry throat for the last week. I have no idea why.
That's a bummer.
Yeah. But yeah, as I was saying, tarot is a really introspective activity, because you can ask questions like, what do I need to work on today? What do I need to release in order to grow? And it's those particular questions, and based on the cards that you get, that makes you realize, what exactly you need to do to better yourself.
Is it like I know nothing. Okay. So like, is it something that you get like a random assortment or a random deck and then you don't know what you're going to get? Or is it always the same no matter who is picking the card? Like, how does that work?
It's a very strange thing, because some days if you like don't really know what tarot's talking about, it will repeat the same cards to you to try to get you to realize this is a sign that you need to take. But sometimes, basically, I really do think that tarot just basically displays what's in your subconscious and makes you confront that, and like you can't run away from it, basically.
I like that. This is like what I'm into as well, just like in a different vessel. Like I don't look at it through that. Like I get, I'm a therapist by trade, and like I get people to like get into what you're talking about and talk about it, and it's cathartic for them. And it's a similar concept. It's just something I'm not as familiar with. It's just another vessel for that. Would you agree that that's kind of this like the same concept?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely feel that it is like my own form of therapy.
Yeah,
basically.
Cathartic. It sounds super cathartic. Yeah.
Especially because I tend to journal my results.
Yeah.
And journaling really helps me, formulate what exactly these cards are trying to tell me.
Journaling is the absolute shit. Like journaling,
it really is.
For anybody that doesn't do it or has thought about it or is on the fence, like just get things on paper. It's like an incredible
5 minutes a day minimum.
Yeah. I'm in agreement with you on that. So, okay. I want to go into this next one. It's like as oxymoron as it gets. Like, so the second word that you sent me was cynical optimist, hyphenated, right? So let's talk about that. What do you say that? Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's a weird thing because, on my English side of the family, everyone is absolutely cynical, always sees the worst in people. But at the same time, I want to like combat that and try to see the best in people. I think this also plays into like my previous people pleasing behavior, where I always tried seeing the best in people and wanted to do things for people out of goodness, and then, getting walked all over basically. And then I turn into like the cynic and go, oh, like not necessarily a grudge, but just like this kind of judgment, I suppose. So it definitely is a really weird oxymoron and a weird yin yang in the mind that I have. So
it makes sense to me, like the way I'm thinking about it, like the way you just described it. It sounds like you grew up in a household where you were saying like were you, let me ask you this question before I go into that. Like you mentioned your family's English background, and then you like mentioned the cynicism with it. Like, are you suggesting that like that's like a byproduct of being from England or being English?
Oh yeah, it's certainly a cultural thing. Cynicism, especially in rural England, very, very like ingrained in English culture.
Okay, so to me, it sounds like you had maybe this reaction to like this big. Hold on 1 second. I have a cat going crazy, and I'm gonna put her downstairs. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. 1 second. Okay. So we were talking about cynicism and it being a cultural component of being English. And I was going to make the connection that I thought that maybe as a young person, you saw that a lot. And then you had like the reaction that I need to overcompensate and try to get to the other side of this and do the more people pleasing thing. And then in turn, like it's like this internal struggle maybe with you that like, this is a part of who I am, but also like, I want to be more over here, and you maybe overcompensated.
Oh, definitely. I definitely think that's the case. Yeah.
And now you're just now you kind of just align with both. So does it sound like you just don't really know where you like, is it like you're unsure of where you fit within that little spectrum, or how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I definitely still feel like I'm in that limbo of being like, am I going to be an absolute cynic today? Or am I going to be absolutely, seeing the best in people today? It really honestly just depends on what's going on, what circumstances are at play.
For sure. And I know there were some things we might get into a little later in the interview that were on your mind about kind of within the same realm. We'll maybe broach that subject later. I want to get through this list. So I'm gonna go with the next word you chose. You chose sensitive. That's I want to know a little bit more about that. We actually haven't talked about that at all.
Yeah, I've definitely always been extremely sensitive to like my environment around me. Like I actually wrote an essay about this. I put on my portfolio, but I definitely tend to like read and perform the room around me. Like I definitely pick up on energies of other people. Like if somebody's, tense, I'm gonna emulate that, and I'm gonna be tense as well. But I was a crybaby all the time when I was little. Up until at least 6th grade, I had meltdowns constantly at school. But it was also because, I still have generalized anxiety disorder, but I just didn't know how to process that when I was a kid. So I would just, I would have stomach aches constantly. I would cry all the time. And and then it just manifested into, being like the token quiet kid growing up in a K through 12 private school. But yeah. And then now I don't know. I pick up very easily on other people's emotions, and I definitely, basically I pretty much mirror other people, and, if they're having a good day or if they're having a bad day.
Yeah. What comes to mind when you say that, like, so you're saying in social situations in general, is it fair to say like you almost put on a mask, like within social situations, like you just match what other people are doing, and it's not really like, I don't know, I don't want to say it's not the true form of who you are, but you're just responding as opposed to like being proactive about who you truly are. Does that make sense?
I would say it's that and a mix of trying to be my authentic self, basically.
Okay.
But if somebody's like, like overpoweringly pissed off or tense, I'm definitely gonna mirror that.
Do you think it's within the people pleasing realm? Do you think that's like similar thing going on there?
I would say so. Yeah.
Okay. So, but within that, like, just so I understand, like sensitivity, like, And then you talked about that. Like, where does the sensitive part come in? Is it just because you're being sensitive of other people? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, that, and I also am just very emotional. Like, I, somebody can tell me like if people cry, I cry with them.
Okay.
Basically, I remember when it was like winter 2019. My mom fell down the stairs. It was super icy. She fell down the steps outside. And even though she sprained her ankle, she was in so much pain crying, and I just couldn't help but, cry with her. That was such like a very like strong memory for me.
She's okay. It was just an ankle.
Oh yeah.
Like,
yeah, it was just a sprained ankle.
Could have been worse with stairs and ice.
Oh yeah.
Oh man. So I get the impression you're saying you feel things pretty deeply and you have a lot of empathy for other people, and like you can get overwhelmed with your emotions sometimes.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, which is like that happens, and that makes sense. I want to roll right into impulsivity, because I feel like with what you're describing and then impulsivity, it's like, so let's talk about that.
I mean, we can talk about my hair. Monica, who you interviewed, she is my stylist.
Yeah.
She recently dyed my hair red after being like this pale silvery blonde for a few months at this point. And I wanted like a nice strawberry blonde, and we got that, but then it faded super quick. And I was like, I can't look at this. So I just went straight to Target. I got box dye, and I did it. And, applying the SIUE too in summer 2019, that was an impulse decision. And it worked out great for me because, I'm with a really great group of friends, and I'm home for school, and I'm saving more money on school at this point. But yeah, it's a very funny story. I applied to SIUE just on the whim at 3:00 in the morning. I just paid the $45 application fee, and I said, I'm gonna do it. So.
Okay. So I would agree that's impulsive, but like it sounds like it worked out, and like I feel like some people could use some impulsivity that don't, and like whatever.
Yeah.
But how do you go from like chilling 3:00 in the morning to like I'm going to this school and I'm doing this? Like, was it something you've been thinking about for a while, or what?
I was originally going to go to Eastern Illinois University, in spring 2020. I would have been a legacy kid. My parents were alumni. I had a very strange journey with school because, so I went to a K through 12 school all my life called the Governor French Academy. I graduated in the class of 9. And then I went to Lawrence University in Appleton, Wisconsin from September 2017 to June 2018. That school had like 1,200 kids max. And I transferred because I realized that I needed like a bigger school, and basically going to such a small liberal arts school like that was basically high school all over again, just like more than 100 times the size of my private school. So I thought about EIU because my parents both went there and they really liked it. And this is another thing too about like the people pleasing and external validation. I wanted to go because my parents wanted me to go.
Yeah.
And then, 3:00 in the morning one night in middle August, I was like, I can't do this. Like, I need to do something for myself. And then I was just having really intense anxiety that night. And then that's how I applied to SIUE, basically.
Did you find relief from the anxiety by applying?
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely released a lot.
So then my natural thought process goes to like, you wanted to go to, it's EIU, Eastern Illinois University?
Yeah.
You wanted to go there to like please your parents, and then you do that at 3:00 in the morning. Like, how much time goes by until you like disclose that you did that to them?
It was the next day when I woke up.
How did they? So no time lost. Like, boom.
Yeah, I told my mom, I was like, hey, I applied to SIUE. She went, why'd you do that?
But was there disappointment? Was it just kind of like, what's happening? Like, what did it look like?
They were just like, you keep changing your mind. Why are you changing your mind all the time? And that was definitely a main question I got from my family all the time from at least 2017 to about 2019.
Mm-hmm.
But ever since going to SAE, I've pretty much had like a clear idea of what I want to do for like a long-term goal.
Yeah. It's interesting, like, I don't know. I'm going to call it like the 17 to 21-year-old window, right? Like it's a really formative, and I would even say like pressure-packed time in your life, and you're supposed to like pick this direction to go. And like it's like you're 17, 18, 19, like you're so young and it's so much pressure, and it's just a weird thing about society to me that we put all this pressure on people at that age. Do you feel like there's pressure, or like, I don't know, like, do you feel like when I ask you questions about your long-term goals or anybody, do you feel like you're supposed to have an answer? Like, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just such a hard thing because my family is always on me about like, oh, what are you going to do with your degree? And it wasn't until literally fall semester that I realized like my solid degree choices, because I was jumping back and forth. I always wanted to be an English major. That's always stayed the same, but my minors have changed so much. Mm-hmm. Like when I would do studio art, then I do creative writing, and now I'm at art history. But art history seemed like, perfect for me, because I've always been like big into like researching and just learning all about art. And I don't know, I just feel like with like an art studio minor, I'd be wasting time, I guess. So yeah, it's definitely difficult trying to explain to my family my thought process and being like, I don't know what I want to do at this point, but I will get there.
I feel like that's so normal. I'm not trying to like disrespect like your family's view of it or anything. I just think it's normal to be like, I'm interested in this, and like, I don't really know. I'm this age, and like, it's gonna bump out. It's gonna not to make this about me, but like, I'm a therapist, right? And like, I've worked a long time to get to where I'm at, and like, but part of why I'm where I'm at is because I didn't fucking know what I wanted to do, and like, I had my struggles of my own, and even now I'm like, I could do this for a while, and I like it, and I think I'm okay at it, but like, I don't know if I want to do it. Like, people are ever changing. Like, I just don't like the pressure that's put on people around your age. I don't know. I think it creates more problems than it doesn't. But I think it sounds like you're in the wheelhouse, which is good. Like, the last word naturally comes up. It's artistic. Do you want to talk about your art and like, or what do you want to talk about with that?
Well, basically, I specialize more so in watercolor portrait art. I do some acrylic. But so honestly, I feel like my artwork, my art style, and like my artistic abilities are inherited, because my dad is a portrait artist as well, but he's more into oil painting. He mostly paints portraits of musicians. My mom she also paints, but her oeuvre is mostly about graphic design and photography. She does watercolor as well. She's actually the one who got me into watercolor, even though she seldom does it. Although we have no idea where my dad got his like art flair from, because he's basically the only one of his siblings who like has like dived right into it, and it's like a bit of his income. And then my mom, my maternal grandma, she would have gone to art school in the 1960s in England, but then she met my grandpa, who was in the Air Force, and that happened. But then her dad is the one who apprenticed under John Aldridge and Richard Bawden.
He's the one. Is that the grandfather that when you were emailing me, you said he passed away?
Yeah, my great grandfather, he actually suffered from mental illness, and he hanged himself. When he was 39.
And I'm sorry to hear that. I know you didn't know him, and but I know it's like that can affect things generationally. But I know when you disclose that to me, also, it sounds like you feel like you identify at least with him artistically speaking, like within yourself.
Oh, yeah, actually, he's my spirit guide. Like, it's like I've talked to somebody who does intuitive Reiki, and I go to somebody named Vic, who is like my go-to tarot reader and has been since October 2020.
Uh-huh.
And literally, I got a spirit guide reading from them. And the first card that came out to identify my spirit guide was the artist. And I just knew it was him.
Yeah.
That was after so I first dove into a spirit guide journey when I did intuitive Reiki with somebody named Katie. And she was like giving me names of people like in my corner, basically. And she gave out my Great Paw's second name, Robert.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really weird because even though it's not his first name, I always thought his name was Robert growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I thought that was his first name, but then I found out his name was William. And I just knew it was him from how I remembered him.
Yeah.
Just hearing stories about him. But yeah, finding out he was my spirit guide was absolutely nuts.
Yeah, and it's interesting, like it's like this idiosyncrasy that's that only you can know about. Like you had this misconception that his name was this, and then that seems too coincidental not to, you know what I mean? I get your thought process there. I want to know, like, I don't know anything about painting. I know you said that you're like watercolor, and then you said you do some acrylic.
Yeah.
I don't know about acrylic. Can you tell people about that? I don't know anything about that.
Acrylic compared to watercolor, it's really funny because a lot of people say that watercolor is a pain in the ass, but I say the same thing about acrylic.
What is it? I don't know what it is. Like, what's the difference? I know it's conceptually what watercolors are, but what's acrylic?
Acrylic is a more opaque painting, painting medium. It's a lot of layers, and you have to get like the right colors. And it's just it's a much like harder process. Like, I have a self-portrait I was going to do in acrylic, and I just kind of gave up on it because like getting the skin tones right, it's just a lot of like painting, like mixing paints. Whereas with watercolor, you can just like do like a simple dab of a certain color, just add water, and you're golden.
It sounds like what you're saying, at least how I'm understanding it, watercolors for you, it's just like easier to manipulate, like what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I definitely conserve a lot more with watercolor because you don't need that much at all with watercolor. Whereas with acrylic, you need a lot.
That makes sense. I mean, it makes sense how you're explaining it. If you put it in front of me, I'd be like, I don't know. This is Chinese. Okay, so we've covered a lot within this 5-word format, but I want to kind of transition to a topic. You've alluded to a few times in talking about school that you went to private Catholic school, which for me, go ahead.
I went to a private Catholic school for my preschool just 1 year.
Okay.
Then I went to some Montessori preschool for a couple of years after that. Then I went to an extremely secular K through 12 school from 2004 to 2017. Okay.
I just found it a little interesting when you mentioned that, because you had told me that like your dad growing up, until 19 years old, was a Jehovah's Witness, and he still has some family that identifies with that particular religion. And then your mom is very science-based and an atheist, right?
Basically. Yeah, although she is kind of warming up to my witchcraft bullshit.
Are you trying to persuade, or is it just kind of naturally happening?
It's naturally happening. I mean, I have this oracle deck that she's in her garden phase or midlife crisis. And I have this oracle deck that has like an entire list of like plants, plants, fruits, vegetables, and their like divine meanings, basically. And she was such a fan of that, especially because it was watercolor art as well. And she was like, "Oh, I'm going to use your oracle deck as an inspiration for my witch garden."
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
She's starting to come out of her shell. No. So I just want to know, like, I don't know, did you feel any of that growing up? Like, I feel like those are and for lack of a better term, it's like kind of contrasting ideologies or contrasting thought processes. I know that he wasn't really, that wasn't, when did your dad have you? Like, I'm sure that he was far away from that.
My parents were both 30 when they had me.
Okay.
He married my parents married when they were 22 and 23.
Okay.
But he went to school. He went up to, so my dad's from Chester, Illinois. Then he went to SWIC, Southwestern Illinois College, which is originally BAC, Belleville Area College. And he was the first of his siblings to go to school. And he wanted to go to school, and that was something that the witnesses were against. Okay. So that's kind of where he started breaking off. But yeah, growing up, I always knew in the back of my mind that my paternal grandma was a Jehovah's Witness, and she was extremely religious. But I hung out with my maternal grandma all the time when I was a baby. She babysat me all the time. But there was something that happened when I was 3. I've been once ever since I could formulate words, and I would just like, I had no filter. I frankly still don't have a filter. But I was telling my Jehovah's Witness grandma all about Santa Claus, the Tooth Fairy, and then she just stopped me and went, "All that's not real. Like, it's all a lie." And I was devastated. Oh my and goodness. My British grandma found out about this, and like a dynamite was basically lit in her core. And she was so pissed off. And apparently she contemplated writing a letter to my grandma being like, what you did would be similar to me telling her that God wasn't real.
Yeah. So. Yeah. It's the same. It's like, at least how you receive it at that point. Like that's, you have so many hopes, and like it's, that would be devastating. So like when she does that, like, did you take what she said for truth, or did like people try to repair that? Like, was it something as soon as you heard that you're like, okay, it's not real, or how did that play out?
It definitely got repaired, because I still, was a huge fan of holidays. Easter has always been my favorite holiday.
Yeah.
So yeah, my maternal side of the family basically just tried to not have it like affect me that much, I guess. But I still grew up knowing of that tension within like both sides of my family.
Do you know, because I think there'll probably be people listening, and I know like a very minimal amount. Are you well versed, or do you know about like that particular religion and like what they believe, and or not really? Like, are you kind of far removed from it?
I know the basis of what they practice and what they don't practice.
Would you be willing to talk about it?
Yeah, we can talk about that.
Okay. Just speak about it. Like, just like, yeah.
So they don't celebrate any holidays because of their pagan background. Go to Kingdom Hall, not church. Apparently now they're doing Zoom sessions for Kingdom Hall. I actually just saw my Jehovah's Witness grandma last week, I think. And she's giving me updates about how things are going. They believe in something called the new system, which is kind of paradise. But, my grandma's always told me, 1914 was the year that everything started going to shit, basically.
1914?
1914, yeah.
Why 1914?
The start of World War I. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's pretty much the basis of what I remember at the moment.
What do they think happens when you die?
They believe that those who were witnesses can be saved. And then some people, I think there's something about how, you could have a chance to be resurrected. And some people just don't, basically.
Yeah, I'm happy you mentioned that, because I have to consider confidentiality, but I've worked with people that are witnesses, and they had a death in the family, and there was like talks of resurrection. And for me, with my internal belief system and values, like it was very hard for me to navigate, because there was kids involved, and like it was just difficult to navigate because there's like the resurrection piece. But you're saying there's some people that don't believe that? To your understanding, I guess?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I know like surface level,
Yeah.
like about like what witnesses believe in. It's just very strange because my grandma, she, was married to my grandpa, then they got married twice and divorced twice. He wasn't that like too great of a person, but I remember like I think it was the third to last time I was down there. Despite all the crap that he put her through, she still said something like, "Oh, your grandpa has a chance to come back and join a new system." And my dad and I were just like, "What are you talking about?"
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't mean to put you in. I don't want you to feel like I'm putting you in a position of being like the spokesperson for.
yeah,
But
yeah,
like, I just whatever like that. I was just wanting to know what you knew. But it's interesting stuff. Like it's just another. I don't know. It's hard for me to grasp that concept because
yeah,
I'm so far removed from that. But that's what
yeah.
some people believe. So I'm interested. Like that's how your dad was raised, and then almost 3-4 years later he meets your mom, who was probably raised like almost polar opposite of that. Like, do you know about their meeting story, or like how did they become interested in one another?
They met at community college in Belleville when they were about 20.
Yeah.
Then they started dating. Then they went to EIU together. And then after graduation, they got married. And then they moved back from Charleston to Belleville. 7 years of marriage, and then they had me, basically.
Mm-hmm. Are you the oldest sibling?
Mm-hmm. Yep. My younger brother is 4.5 years younger.
Is that your only sibling?
Mm-hmm.
So he's in high school?
He just graduated.
That makes sense. 22 minus math. But that's cool. Is he going to college, or what's he planning on doing?
So he is getting money from the government because he is disabled because of his autism.
Oh, right. You mentioned that. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think he's going to be doing some volunteer work. But he is part of a program called PTOEC, where he and a bunch of other special needs kids, they do basketball, bowling, swimming. It's a really, really nice program that helps them get out and get active every week.
Awesome. That's awesome. Because I know, like with him, like is socialization and things, like is that a challenge for him with his diagnosis? Yeah.
He, I wouldn't say he's nonverbal.
Yeah.
But so he went to the same school as me, my K through 12 school, until halfway through his freshman year of high school, because they just let him sleep in class because he couldn't catch up with the other kids. My brother cannot formulate an essay. He cannot express his own thoughts because it's such a hard time trying to ask him a question. Like I can just ask him, "Hey, Alan, what do you think about this?" And he just cannot like explain what he's thinking. And along with that as well, he tries to say what he thinks you want him to say. So it's just really difficult with that. So, I mean, he can say yes or no to like simple questions. And he loves talking about like trains and geography. But other than that, I mean, he's a very quiet, sweet kid. He reminds me a lot of Lenny from A Mice and Men.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That's a good, that's very like tangible.
Yeah.
Like,
He's a tall, gentle giant. He's like 6'8".
It's interesting that you mentioned trains because I've met other people with autism in my line of work and personally. And a lot of the time trains is something that comes up. Like, I feel like there's I don't know what that is. Maybe somebody could study that, but like he likes trains. Did he like Thomas growing up?
He did. He definitely did.
Yeah.
He has a whole bunch of train books. He has a whole bunch of like train movies.
That's cool. What's your brother's name? I didn't ask his name. Alan. My middle name. Cool.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
ALAN.
ALAN. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, my dad named him after Alan Shearer from the Newcastle football team in England.
Oh, sick. Yeah. That's cool. Okay. So I want to know, like, we have a few other things on the list here that we could talk about. I know that you mentioned like kind of being conflicted long term about what you're wanting to do.
Yeah.
When I first heard from you, you were talking about wanting to move to England. And then when I talked to you today, you were saying that kind of like, it's not what you want to do now. Like, what are you thinking like long term?
So I would love to move to England, but the problem is money. Because I was just thinking, if I move to England for my master's, that's probably $30,000 down the drain in 1 year. And I don't have that money whatsoever. So yeah, I don't feel comfortable, moving there until I feel financially stable enough.
Yeah.
So now I'm thankful that I'm realizing this now until like the last minute, because originally I was going to go to University of West England in Bristol this upcoming January. I get my bachelor's degree this December. So I would have had probably less than 2 weeks to prepare after getting my bachelor's and do my master's program. And in England, their master's programs are an intense year long. So I would have had probably intense burnout from that. But yeah, and COVID has caused so many delays within universities there that I got an email from the program director for their curating program about a month ago being like, oh, I'd love to do an interview with you. And then I followed up with them the next day, no response yet whatsoever. And this program starts in 7 months, and I have to apply for a visa at least 3 months before I'm supposed to go there. I have to have so much money saved up for it. So it's very much like, it's a time crunch. So I just realized it's not feasible.
Yeah.
And then I thought about, if I can't do that, maybe I'll go to Kingston University in London or University East Anglia Norwich. And those programs are £17,000 for 1 year.
What's the conversion to American currency? Do you know?
Like $25,000, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would have to like pull loans out the wazoo.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, it's not worth it. And especially one thing too is there are like a little amount of opportunities for like curating and art museum management, museum studies over in England compared to here, where there's like plenty of cities to choose from. So what I'm thinking is I could probably go to San Francisco for my master's degree because I have family there as well. And then, or I can just stay local and get my museum studies degree from UMSL.
San Francisco would be cool. I think I think money again would be like something you'd have to bank, and like it's always money, isn't it? It's just that son of a bitch, that money. Right. What money or what? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
The problem too is, if I try to get my master's degree here, there's a little opportunity for museum study stuff here as well. So
yeah,
I mean, I'd have to go to Chicago to find some opportunity in like an art museum field.
So what's your timeline then, like to figure this stuff out? Like practically speaking, like.
Well, I want to get my master's starting next August 2022, and that would be about 2 years of this program, and then I would try to find a job at that point in my field. But for now, I'm just saving up money, basically finishing my degree at SAUE.
Yeah, you're in a good spot. Like you have options, and like you can bank the money away. Like you're in a good spot. Like, okay, so there was a topic that you had brought up with me via email and when we were talking before we started recording. That was kind of like you'd mentioned people pleasing a few times and like boundary setting. Do you want us to talk about this? We don't have to. It's up to you.
I'm just trying to think about like the best way to go about it,
Yeah. I'm thinking like, let's think. So like you're 22 years old, right? And like you're like you had mentioned like you have a whole new set of friends than you once did, and I feel like currently in 2021 in general, it's hard to make friends because everything's online. But also like when you're an adult, it's especially hard. Do you want to maybe talk about like how that went for you, like making a whole new set of friends, or?
Yeah. So I have known my friend Mal. I met Mal on Twitter in like 2016, I want to say. But then we ended up working at Target together in 2018.
Okay.
And then Mal invited me to like a couple parties, and that's basically how I met this new group of friends. But even then, like that entire group has pretty much changed, basically. But when I was starting at Target and when I first started going to these parties, I was involved with some people who, I don't know, it just was very surface level friendships. And but then I met one of my best friends, Lane, when I threw a house party for my 20th birthday, which was really fun. I mean, Lane and their friend Paulina just showed up randomly because my house party was like a free for all. You know, anybody can come. And yeah. And then I think it was around that time that I started realizing, you know, what doesn't serve me any longer. But I was in a friendship where the person verbatim described it as like a mentor and apprentice dynamic. And I just knew, I felt like I was in this like leader follower thing that I just, you know, felt kind of stuck in, basically, that I wanted to get out of. And then, yeah, about a few months later, after I first met Lane, had another party at my place. It wasn't a house show at this point. But yeah, some shit hit the fan, and the girl who I was in this friendship with, who called me like her apprentice, I finally stood up to her after noticing she did some like really shitty things. And she lashed out and pretty much turned my whole world upside down by spreading bullshit lies about me.
Yeah, you mentioned like you described it as a smear campaign. And
yeah, she told like the entire internet this is a smear campaign.
Okay, like what? I'm interested in this part of this because I know the specifics of it's delicate and I don't want to like get into all that. But like this, can we talk about this smear campaign and like what that looks like? Because for me, it's like I grew up in a time where I remember as a young kid like not even having the internet at all, right? And then the internet came up and like, but I feel like for people, you're 10 years younger than me, so like I feel like the power of the internet and like what a smear campaign could do to somebody's like mental well-being or just well-being in general.
Oh yeah,
could be pretty powerful. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Basically, she created, like, she was very artistic with her her Instagram stories, and you know, she would just like tweet stuff all the time. But yeah, she just, and another thing too, you know, she would use like big words that, you know, are in social media, that are in social media today. Like, I don't know if you know about like the whole Gabby Hanna stuff going on right now.
I don't.
But, you know, using words like gaslighting and accomplice and stuff like that without like knowing the exact context of what you're saying, just stuff like that. And some people actually believed it, and people who I thought were my friends believed it and ended up siding with her after seeing that stuff. And it's really hard to bounce back from it and trying to, you know, explain to them, you know, this isn't what happened. You know, there were 4 other witnesses to what truly happened. But I ended up writing like a 6-page Google Doc of like detailing my friendship with this person, and then, you know, what the details of what went down, like truly went down that night in the aftermath of that.
Did you put it like online?
Yeah, I did. And then after I mean, I haven't heard anything from her in a year at least. And the last time she like tried saying something, you know, people would ask about it, and I'd just be like, here, take it, read this.
Yeah.
And
done. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, exactly.
I have some thoughts about what you said. You mentioned like you said gaslighting and accomplice, and you were saying like it wasn't really used properly.
Yeah.
So like, are you saying that like that person used those terms to describe you and then automatically like you were immediately guilty because it was said, or like what do you mean?
Yeah, basically. Yeah, she just called me a gaslighter, and I was an accomplice when I didn't know what to do, because she took my friend like upstairs when everyone was downstairs, and we were like, what was going on? What the hell do we do? And at that time, I had no boundaries. I mean, this is partially my fault, because I should have been like, hey, this is fucked up. You're not doing this. But I didn't know what to do, because I was stuck in this dynamic with this person where she, supposedly knew best, and I just didn't know what to do. But I had this inner gut voice in me being like, this is wrong. You need to stand up against the person. You know what you saw. And then I listened to that. Like I couldn't shake it out. And then I finally said what I had to say, and that's what happened.
And then boom, so are you still experiencing residual effects from that smear campaign? Like, is it still affecting you?
No, not really. I mean, past the 2-year mark, I mean, I don't know if it's like some sort of paranoia, but I always get like very tense, especially on my social media. Like if I see people, because the thing is, I mean, as an artist, I really want my work to get out there, but I also don't want like the wrong people to see my stuff. So I'm always worried, like, oh, could this person know this person that I've had problems with? Could she, be sending people to look at my stuff because I have it blocked and everything? But
what do you mean by wrong people? Like, what people would be the wrong people? Or you don't just say names or anything, but like conceptually.
Just people who are affiliated with this person.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the term paranoid. Like, it feels as though this smear campaign, if you will, like had such an effect on you that now you're like, your mind's going to all these, like you mentioned paranoid places. Like,
yeah.
Is it something that you feel like the paranoia and the effects of that has it improved over time, or do you feel like it's still kind of lingering and it's coming out in different ways now?
It's definitely a process, because these last couple months I'm finally reaching the point where it doesn't affect me constantly. And I realized I manifested like shit happening to this person, because I would have like this thought being like, oh God, something's gonna happen, but I didn't fight it. And because I didn't fight it, it ended up happening. But if I have this thought and I go, this isn't going to happen, it doesn't happen. But yeah, it's weird, because I would text my friend, the one who was assaulted by this person, and I would be like, I'm afraid something's going to happen with this person very soon. And it would happen. But I just realized if I don't speak it into existence, it doesn't happen.
Interesting. So then I feel like that would hold a lot of weight. Like, I feel like you have the power to like dictate things. Is that kind of
yeah basically.
So I also, like, in hearing you tell that story, like, I feel like bigger picture too, like with the internet, it speaks to like this thing that we're seeing happen where, like, if it's on the internet, it's true, right? And like before you can even get ahead of it, it's already like fucking spread to 58 people, and like then it's like, what do you do? And when it's like you personally, like, I can't even fathom like how that would be to deal with. Sorry that happened, like, it's a big picture thing. Like, it's false information and things spread so fast on the internet. But it sounds like you're at a point now that you have this, like, it's almost like you have this binding document that you can just, like, it's like you're handing out business cards. Like, just, I'm done with that part of my life.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you feel like with that topic we're okay? Like, we don't need.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just thought we could, like, I feel like we could end on a kind of fun thing. I want to talk about like the Beach Boys a little bit and Chris Farley.
Oh,
would that be okay?
Yeah. That's
okay.
fine.
all I know about the Beach Boys, I know my parents listened to them, and like I have like a general familiarity with some of their songs. But I also like as an adult, I'm like, it's funny because I feel like their music's an oxymoron too, because a lot of the time they're talking about this incredibly painful shit, and it's just always like, yeah, it's like it's presented in this really happy way. So like,
Yeah, literally their song "Till I Die." That's exactly that.
yeah. So like, I don't know. Tell people what you know about the Beach Boys. Like, what I mean, I know you talked about it a little bit, but like, what's your interest in this?
Okay, I have had this like dream exhibit in my mind ever since like last year when I realized I want to do curating museum studies. 2026, the 60th anniversary of Pet Sounds, their greatest album. I just want to have an entire exhibit dedicated to like how they created the album, like people who are affiliated with it, like certain things that they used for the album. And even then, their single Good Vibrations came out in that time as well. I mean, that's such like that's a wacky song. I absolutely love it. But yeah, I grew up with Pet Sounds all the time.
Yeah.
The three main bands that played in my house that I remember like my toddler years were the Beach Boys, the Beatles, and Blur, like the three Bs right there. Cool. But yeah, it's more definitely a nostalgic thing for me for why I love Beach Boys so much.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just think that Pet Sounds is just one of the greatest albums of all time, which is, I think Rolling Stone has that as well, or Sgt. Pepper. I think it goes back and forth.
It's interesting that it's because my brother's a musician. I know I talked about my brother earlier, but he was writing a song recently, and he was like sending me like some rough sketches of it, and he was like, I'm really going for like a Beach Boys vibe here, and I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, and he alluded to like, it's like the lyrics are really fucked up, but like it's kind of presented in this like upbeat way. And I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And then I kind of listened to some more Beach Boys songs, and I was like, I guess I had never really like taken a moment to like really think about what they were talking about and like the way it was being presented. So I don't know. That's interesting. And I think it's cool. Like, I think it's important to have have interests that are like super specific like that. I think that's cool. But the thing I can talk about a little more is Chris Farley. What's like, I mean, maybe you're not like the kind of person that picks favorite things, but like, do you have like a favorite movie or sketch or like Chris Farley moment?
Tommy Boy, of course. Matt Foley, of course.
Yeah. Matt Foley is the inspirational speaker.
Yeah, the motivational speaker. Yeah.
Yeah. What's your favorite part of Tommy Boy?
Oh, when he destroys those car figures in front of that one guy.
This is like an energy thing in the what'd you do? His face, like him saying "what did you do" in his face, like lives in my memory forever. It's so funny.
Oh yeah, it's so great.
I still say like son of a and
oh yeah. Oh my god. There was a moment with my last relationship. I tried getting him to watch Tommy Boy with me. And he wanted to turn it off halfway, and I kind of knew that it wasn't going to work out.
Yeah, you're like, if you don't like that, I don't like you. Like that's how much weight. I remember there was like some Chris Farley documentaries that came out like, I don't know, 10 years ago maybe or something, and it was like chronicling his career and like then his tragic death. And I just did the thing where I space out in the middle of talking. Hold on, I'm gonna get it. Oh, Tommy Boy apparently didn't do well at the box office. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, and then Black Sheep did astronomically worse.
Yeah, but I remember they were recounting like that it really affected Chris Farley, like it fucked with him a bit. But then now it's like such a classic. I don't know how that happens, how movies can flop like that.
I do wonder how Shrek would be though if it had been like the main voice instead of Mike Myers.
If it was Chris Farley?
Yeah, because he had recorded for Shrek, the first movie, but he died and it didn't work out.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's footage on YouTube, I think.
Really? When did Shrek come out?
2001, I think.
Is that when he died?
No, he died in 97, but I think they started really early in their production.
I was gonna say I remembered him dying much earlier than that, but
Yeah.
so they were already like that was already in motion.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. He would have been good for that.
He would have been, yeah.
Yeah. Shrek's a cool. I like Shrek.
Shrek 2's the best.
Why is that?
It's just, I mean, again, it's a nostalgic thing. I mean, the story is pretty great. I love the fairy godmother and that.
For sure. I don't know. Chris Farley, like, I don't know. When I think of Chris Farley, I think of Tommy Boy. I think of the In the Van Down by the River.
Oh yeah.
And I think of him dancing with Patrick Swayze.
Yeah.
Just like fucking wrecking everybody on the stage. Like,
yeah. I love when he played Rudy Giuliani's son.
Yes, and he's just a fucking idiot. Like, but yeah, okay. I love Chris Farley, and I don't get the opportunity to talk to people about Chris Farley very often, so I'm happy.
Yeah, me neither. This is great.
Yeah. All right, so Izzy, I think we're a little over an hour, and I don't have anything else written down. How are you feeling? You feel like you want to discuss anything else, or?
I think we've covered pretty much everything I want to talk about.
Cool. I appreciate you coming on, and again, like, I appreciate you like listening, and two, like you like doing what I always would hope would happen, like somebody listen and then say they want to be on. So I appreciate you coming on. It's been cool getting to know you a little bit.
Yeah, same for you.
Cool. All right, so I'm gonna stop recording. Don't hang up. But this is the end. Thanks for listening, everybody. Remember that you can submit entries to talkaboutnormal@gmail.com or just message me and you could be a guest on the podcast. Thanks, everybody.